The world of aviation has seen incredible advancements in safety, but some flights have met tragic ends that shook the world. These horrifying accidents left passengers, crew, and entire nations in shock, proving how unforgiving the skies can be when disaster strikes. One of the most chilling air disasters was Malaysia Airlines flight MH370, which vanished in 2014 with 239 people on board. The plane took off from Kuala Lumpur, heading for Beijing, but mysteriously disappeared from radar. Despite years of searching, only a few pieces of wreckage have been found. No one knows exactly what happened, leading to endless theories, from mechanical failure to hijacking. Families were left in agony, desperate for answers that never came. The idea that a massive Boeing 777 could simply vanish without a trace remains one of the greatest mysteries in aviation history, making it one of the most haunting flight disasters ever recorded. Japan Airlines Flight 123 is another terrifying tragedy. In 1985, this Boeing 747 suffered a catastrophic failure in midair due to improper repairs years earlier. A bulkhead explosion destroyed the plane's hydraulic system, making it impossible to control. For over 30 minutes, the plane struggled in the sky while passengers screamed and prayed, knowing there was no way out. Eventually, the aircraft crashed into a mountainside, killing 520 of the 524 people on board. Survivors later recalled the horrifying final moments of chaos as the plane spiraled down. It remains the deadliest single aircraft accident in history, a chilling reminder of how one small flaw can lead to disaster. The Tenerife Airport disaster in 1977 is another nightmarish event. Two jumbo jets, KLM Flight 4805 and Pan Am Flight 1736, were on the runway in heavy fog. Due to a deadly miscommunication, the KLM plane attempted to take off while the Pan Am jet was still taxiing. The result was a horrifying collision that engulfed both aircraft in flames. Passengers trapped inside had no chance of escape, and 583 people perished in what remains the deadliest aviation accident of all time. Survivors described the panic, the unbearable heat, and the sight of fellow passengers being swallowed by fire. It was a horrifying lesson in the dangers of miscommunication. Air France Flight 447 met a terrifying fate in 2009 when it plunged into the Atlantic Ocean during a storm. The Airbus A330, flying from Rio de Janeiro to Paris, encountered turbulence, and the pilots became disoriented after the autopilot disengaged. Confused by incorrect speed readings, they made fatal mistakes, sending the plane into an uncontrolled descent. Passengers were strapped in their seats as the aircraft plummeted into the dark ocean, breaking apart on impact. It took 2 years to recover the black box, revealing a shocking truth: human error played a major role in the disaster. All 228 lives were lost in a matter of minutes, proving how even advanced technology cannot prevent disaster if pilots fail to react correctly. In 1988, Aloha Airlines Flight 243 experienced a horrifying midair structural failure. As the Boeing 737 cruised over Hawaii, a section of the fuselage suddenly tore off, exposing passengers to the open sky. The cabin turned into a nightmare as hurricane-force winds roared through the plane, ripping off seats and sucking a flight attendant out of the aircraft. Miraculously, the pilots managed to land the crippled jet safely, saving 94 of the 95 people on board. Survivors were left with lifelong trauma, and the terrifying sight of a plane flying with its roof missing became one of the most shocking images in aviation history. The accident exposed serious flaws in aircraft maintenance, proving that one weak spot in the fuselage could mean the difference between life and death. A chilling act of terrorism took place on Pan Am Flight 103 in 1988. The Boeing 747 was flying over Lockerbie, Scotland, when a bomb hidden in the cargo hold exploded. The plane broke apart instantly, raining wreckage down on the town below. Entire homes were destroyed, and 270 people were killed, including residents on the ground. The sheer violence of the explosion meant no one on board had a chance to survive. Families of the victims were devastated, and the world was left horrified by the senseless destruction. It was later revealed that Libyan terrorists were behind the attack, turning the tragedy into one of the most infamous cases of aviation terrorism in history. Another nightmare unfolded in 1996 with the crash of TWA Flight 800. The Boeing 747 had just taken off from New York when it suddenly exploded midair. Witnesses on the ground described seeing a massive fireball light up the sky as the plane disintegrated. For years, conspiracy theories swirled, with some claiming the jet was shot down. However, investigators determined that a fuel tank explosion caused the disaster. All 230 passengers and crew perished in an instant, their vacation plans and dreams erased in a single terrifying moment. The haunting wreckage pulled from the ocean became a grim reminder of how one tiny spark can doom an entire flight. The China Airlines Flight 611 tragedy in 2002 was equally horrifying. The Boeing 747 was flying smoothly when, without warning, it broke apart in midair. Pieces of the plane rained down into the Taiwan Strait, killing all 225 people on board. Investigators later discovered that a poorly repaired crack in the aircraft's fuselage had weakened over time, eventually leading to catastrophic failure. It was a chilling realization. Something as small as an unnoticed crack could result in an entire plane disintegrating in the sky. The thought of passengers enjoying their flight one moment and being torn apart the next is truly nightmarish. Helios Airways Flight 522 in 2005 was like a horror movie come to life. The plane took off from Cyprus, but a pressurization failure left everyone on board unconscious due to lack of oxygen. The aircraft continued flying on autopilot while air traffic controllers desperately tried to contact the pilots, unaware that the entire crew was already incapacitated. Fighter jets were scrambled, and when they flew alongside the ghostly plane, they saw the captain slumped over, the passengers unmoving in their seats. Eventually, the aircraft ran out of fuel and crashed, killing all 121 people on board. The eerie image of a jet flying itself toward doom, with no one alive to stop it, made this one of the most chilling air disasters ever recorded. The Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 crash in 2019 was another horrifying tragedy. Just minutes after takeoff, the brand new Boeing 737 MAX began behaving erratically, forcing the pilots into a desperate battle to keep control. The aircraft's automated system kept forcing the nose downward, and despite the crew's frantic attempts to correct it, the plane plunged into the ground at high speed. All 157 lives were lost in a fiery explosion. What made the crash even more terrifying was the revelation that a similar accident had occurred months earlier with Lion Air Flight 610. Boeing's failure to address the issue turned the 737 MAX into a death trap, leading to global outrage and the eventual grounding of the aircraft. The idea that software errors could override a pilot's control and doom an entire plane was a nightmare that shook the aviation industry to its core. These horrifying air disasters remind us how fragile life is at 30,000 feet. Some were caused by mechanical failures, others by human error, and some by outright evil acts. But in each case, hundreds of innocent lives were lost in terrifying, unimaginable ways. While air travel remains incredibly safe, these tragedies serve as grim reminders of how quickly things can go wrong.